Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I have a lot to talk about, but before I get into that I want to do some housekeeping. I am considering doing a housekeeping section at the beginning of the video. As usual, I include timestamps, so if you don't want to hear this, you can skip right through to the content you want to see. But just general things for housekeeping. First of all, I am going to be doing a Zen3 architecture launch live stream. Please note, I don't think they're going to launch any processors on October 8th, this Thursday. So it was just going to be an architecture overview, but I will be live streaming that once I find what time that event will be held. Another thing, too, is my overall structure of recording videos. I want to kind of get you guys' thoughts. I do raw, uncut videos. I just basically sit down, have my articles popped up, have my notes to my side, and I have a pad of paper and a pen to kind of keep track of what I'm doing. And I just really run with it, one cut. I go back maybe to clean up a few things here and there, but I don't run off a script. And I just really try to give you my honest, genuine thoughts and reactions to things. I don't want to be someone who's faking it or someone who's regurgitating, what's right on a website. I often want to read information and then I want to elaborate on that information, explain more of the technical details of that information, or provide my thoughts on that information. So with that being said, let's jump right into the video here. So we are looking today into straight Zen 3. I'm doing a video mostly on Zen 3 because the launch for the architecture is the 8th. It's in 3 days, and we are all extremely excited for it. So I have a couple articles here I want to pull up. Some of them I've previously addressed. There's not a lot of information coming out about Zen 3. AMD hasn't been very leaky about it, but at the same time, people aren't as hyped, I don't think, about Zen 3 because AMD already is basically at the top of the processor, CPU game, and now this is just the final nail in the coffin for Intel. So people already expect it's going to be good. People already expect it's going to beat Intel. By how much we don't know, how good we don't really know. There's a lot of speculation. I'm going to get into that here in a minute. But really what I just wanted to state was that we don't know too much about Zen 3. There's not too many leaks, and there's not too much hype. And I don't want to downplay it like it's unimportant. But what I want to basically say here is I think the graphics cards have really overtaken because that's where the real competition is. This is just, like I said, the final nail in the coffin for Intel. So let us get right into it. So I have an article here from Tech Power Up. It's from a few days ago, and it is about AMD Ryzen 9 5900X, 27% higher performance than the 3700X. Okay, and that's single-threaded performance there. Now, taking a look at this information. So what do we have here? I have, in my system, a Ryzen 9 3900X 12-core, 24-thread processor. It does very well. It tends to clock at about 4.4 gigahertz on most cores. I am in my basement, so I have a lot better thermals. So that could be contributing to part of that clock speed, as there is a lot of cool air. It stays about 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit year-round down here, so that could be part of I think, but under full load, I'm running at about 4 to 4.1 gigahertz, which I find to be very amazing. But this processor is just astounding. We're looking at 27% higher over the 3700X. So if we look at the AMD Ryzen 3700X here, we're looking at a 4.4 gigahertz max boost and a 3.6 gigahertz base, okay? So we can assume somewhere there's a clock increase. And along with that, we have to also credit the combined CCX. So instead of 4-core CCXs, we're moving to 8-core CCXs, which allows for less latency and ultimately, really with anything in computers and involving, transferring data and electronics and such, latency is key. Power delivery and latency can make all the difference between clock speeds, and clock speeds make all the difference for how fast something works. For example, if I have, a CPU clocked at 2 gigahertz and I have a CPU clocked at 4 gigahertz, same cores, same threads, let's just basically say everything else is the same. The one with 4 gigahertz is going to be much, 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 much faster than the one with 2 gigahertz. And I know a lot of you that might be simple, but I can't stress enough how important clock speeds are. And there is, you can't compare apples to apples, architecture to architecture. I mean, Intel was hitting 5.3 gigahertz single core on their last generation, but AMD still managed to be competitive with that. I'm not saying they beat it, but I'm saying they did manage to be very competitive with an older generation. Now, this generation is the technically the reaction generation, where AMD is essentially reacting to Intel 10th gen, which, in my opinion, really wasn't anything great. I mean, in order to hit 5.3 gigahertz, you'd have to have some insane cooling. Was it possible? Was it more possible than before? Yes, but realistically, that was kind of a stretch on Intel's marketing. But I think with AMD, we're actually have a true 5 gigahertz chip, and this leak's just proving it. I mean, when you look at this, we're on a 7 nanometer EUV node, so we are using ultraviolet light now, which is much more finer detail, which means we have much more properly spaced transistors, which means we can fit more transistors. More transistors means more computing power, more cache, dependent upon what AMD wants to do with the architecture. And not even just that, but even with the node being better, it's also going to call for more efficiency as far as power goes and higher performance. Now, that has nothing to do with the architecture. That's just the node alone. The architecture is absolutely amazing. It's, like I said, we're combining the 4-core CCXs to become the 8-core CCXs. That's going to decrease the latency and stuff. So add that to the advanced 7 nanometer EUV node. We are looking at an amazing performance gain with Zen 3. And I know we're just looking here at the 5900X, but if the 5900X, which I think, the rumors are correct, the leaks are correct, I think AMD is going to try to hit 5 gigahertz with this chip. I say try because I don't know for sure. But what I'm looking at is they could do it with an 8. I know an 8-core chip will hit 5 gigahertz on Zen 3. I will almost guarantee that because Zen 3, like I said, with the new node and the redesigned architecture and the higher power efficiency, which means if it's more efficient on power, you have more room to pull power in a sense. So AMD has some more flexibility there, where Intel, they don't as much, hence why their chips are literal thermal reactors. And that's another thing. I'm not fanboying AMD. I'm basically saying Intel, get your crap together, because Intel doesn't care about the consumer. They're still not trying to care about the consumer, and that's why their company is going to fail. It has nothing to do with that. Now, if they want to turn it around and they want to start really working for the consumer and creating products and pricing for consumers, because while enthusiasts might like Intel, which I'm going to get this to a minute, while enthusiasts like Intel, most people are going to use AMD. Now, enthusiasts on, I'd probably say, $2,000, $3,000 budget. But workstation enthusiasts, nope. AMD Threadripper just is light years beyond Xeon. Xeon is, I often think of Xeon as a dinosaur processor. Like even just my reaction to it, even though it could be a brand new Xeon chip, a brand new architecture series, whatever, Xeon is just, it's just terrible, frankly, compared to Threadripper. And Xeon's one of those things that I see, and I just they will need to drop that branding 100%. They're gonna need a complete new node, complete new architecture, everything for Xeon to really do something amazing, because I think they gave that a bad name, and I think all their CPUs are really getting a bad rap ever since AMD turned things around with the launch of the Zen architecture. And so anyway, so back to what I was stating. So there is, like I said, it's an amazing advantage with the 3900X, versus the 5900X. Same core counts from this new Zen3 series from Zen 2. So I don't think we're going to see anywhere. We may see a 10-core processor. I saw that floating around a while ago, but I haven't seen anything lately about that. So I don't know if that was just an engineering sample, like how AMD's had multiple big Navi 21 dies and only a few are being actually used. So we may have a situation like that, but that's still speculation. But back to what I was saying, I think that this chip, if they would get it to 5 gigahertz, I think it would completely smack Intel, because from what I've heard, Intel's currently its highest normal chip, I should say. I think they still have the i9 Extreme line with like 18 cores or something like that, but it's like $1,000, I think, which you could just get, a 3950X, and you're getting that, or you could get a Threadripper. I mean, you could get a low-end Threadripper. I mean, you're looking, goodness. I mean, it's really, yeah. You got let's see, 3970X, 39. Is there a 39? Nope. Oh, there is. You could get a 3960X for a little bit more than that, and it's 24 cores. Okay, so you can pay $1,000. I'm gonna check my math here. Okay, you can pay. Goodness, that's only. There's a 9th gen for $989. Gotta find the 10th gen. I think they might. Nope. Okay, so here's last gen. I don't know if they even come out with 10th gen parts, to be honest, so excuse me about that. But last gen was an i9-9980XE, 3 gigahertz, 18 cores, $2,200. Wow. That's what I'm saying. Intel, really? It's just not good. But this generation, as of now, the regular consumer chip is 10 cores. From what I've heard, Intel's going back down to 8 cores next series, which I find to be weird, why you would all of a sudden decrease the amount of cores. And I know they're trying something weird with the big core, little core architecture, which personally I don't like. But I don't know all that much about it, so I'm not going to voice my opinion over that too much. But Intel's just really, they're putting themselves into a really difficult spot, because if AMD can get a 12-core processor to hit 5 gigahertz, and they have an 8-core processor next gen and a 10-core this year that was hitting 5 gigahertz, 5.3 thermal velocity boost, that's bullcrap, okay? Because you would have to have, like I said, some really insane cooling to hit that, and that's only on single core for very, very, very small points of time, whereas AMD has been said that they are going to be able to hold boost clocks higher, or not higher, longer than before. So that is also, so even if AMD would have a boost clock of 4.9 gigahertz and Intel have a boost clock of like 5.2, 5.3 gigahertz, but AMD's is holding longer than Intel's, let's say even twice as long. Let's say it's maybe only for, I don't know how long boost clock. I don't sit there and monitor. Let's just say, for the sake of easy math, a second. AMD's holding 2 or 3 seconds. Frankly, AMD's, you're at the end of the day. Intel, you're getting, if it's a 4.9, you're getting 400 megahertz. Let's say so if Intel's at 5, let's say the regular base clock. We have an i9 10900K, because I think that is the overclocking chip. And 10900K. Why is it not? Oh, wait. Oops. I was like typing it in wrong. Okay. And that clocks at 3.7 gigahertz with a boost clock at 5.0. So if AMD can get something where, let's say Intel normally clocks 5.0, they clock at 5.3. So let's say for whatever reason they're hitting 5.3. Because that's their advertised top boost. 5.3 over 1 second, you're getting 300 megahertz. Now AMD, 4.9, and I think they're regularly about 4.6 gigahertz. But you have 4.6 gigahertz times 300 times 3, because let's say it holds 3 seconds. Let's hold 2. If it holds 2 seconds, you get 600 megahertz. You hold 3 seconds, it gets 900 megahertz. Boom. Look at the difference. So if AMD can hold the boost clocks, maybe they're not as high as boost clocks, but they can hold them longer, it essentially would be outperforming, in a sense, Intel's chips, depending upon, you know, where the average clock would be and dependent upon the workflow. A lot of this is very difficult to calculate, so I'm really not going to put too much emphasis on that. Okay, moving on, I have another article here, which is comparing the Ryzen 9 5900X over on video cards, and it appears to be 25% better than my processor, the Ryzen 9 3900X, in single-threaded application, and about 16% in multi-threaded applications. So, once again, very amazing, very, very impressed, and I'm quite happy to see how well Zen 3 is looking. Overall, I really think we could have, you know, a truly amazing lineup. If we would retain the same core counts and such, as of now, video cards is a little chart that is listing what we should expect for upcoming processors. As of now, we have the Ryzen 9 5950X, 16-core 32-thread, Ryzen 9 5900X, 12-core 24-thread, Ryzen 7 5800X, 8-core 16-thread, Ryzen 5 5600X, 6-core 12-thread. Somewhere there could be a 10-core. They might have it. In my opinion, what I think would be smart is if they would do a Ryzen 7 5700X 8-core and a Ryzen 5800X 7 5800X 10-core. The names aren't confirmed, and we know AMD does like to mislead us a little bit. So for all we know, I mean, they could be, you know, literally an entirely different naming scheme. Mind you, on the announcement, they said RTX 6000 GPUs. They never said Zen 5000 series CPUs. So that is something you have to keep in mind, is they could be messing with those a little bit. I do think we're going to have the 5000 Ryzen 5000 series. I think that's legit. But as far as naming, I don't know for sure all the names. So, launch date. Like I said, I really, truly do not think that AMD is going to launch any products on the 8th. I think it's going to be an architecture debut. I may be wrong. I may be right. But in my opinion, it's an architecture debut. From what I'm seeing here, we have a leak just posted over on video cards. And AMD is going to launch its processors starting October 20th, 8 days before AMD launches the 6000 series architecture, not GPUs, architecture. So all these presentations AMD is doing is launching architecture, not products, not chips. So don't walk into those live streams thinking, oh goody, we're going to see just what Zen, I'm sure they'll benchmarks and such. I'm sure I'll have, like, we are, 20% faster than last generation and whatnot. But I don't think they're going to have, here's our chips. But like I said, I may be wrong. They may do it with the chips. I know RDNA 2 for sure. It's not a paper launch. I don't know for sure if Zen 3. I would assume they would keep it consistent. So if they would keep it consistent, we're looking at having the 20th of November. And like I said, I think that, or 20th of October, I think that overall, it's worth the wait. These processors are amazing. I mean, we haven't hit 5 nanometer yet, and these things, I was thinking 10-15%, and we're looking at anywhere from 15 to 25% of an increase. I even saw somewhere 27% of an increase, which I don't fully believe that, but wow. I mean, just wow. It's going to be amazing. So, let's talk future. What does this mean for the future of Intel? Well, I mentioned briefly about Intel and how I didn't think too highly of the Xeon lineup, and how the i9-10900K was pretty much going to get decimated by this CPU because this CPU is going to retain boost clocks longer and it's going to have higher boost clocks than before, potentially hitting 5 gigahertz on either an 8-core or a 12-core chip or both. But I really think this is going to be the final opportunity for Intel to change things around. I think this gives Intel the final warning. Intel's not done yet, but just yet. This is their last chance. Intel needs to wake up. They need to create better products. They need to actually listen to the consumer. Apart from enthusiasts who want the top performance, they'll pay for the extra 3-4% performance. Most people aren't going to pay an extra $50 to $100 for a chip. Intel has charged insane prices for essentially the same thing AMD is giving you. And AMD launches processors sometimes a couple $100 below Intel. And then Intel will kindly, it will gradually drop its price. But we're looking at an AMD processor right now. You can get an AMD processor, 12 cores, for $400. I've seen at different times $380. And, in Intel, for the longest time, the i9-9900K, which when I was building a computer, that was one of the ones I was looking at in comparison to my Ryzen 9 3900X. And at the time, I was going to buy an Intel chip. I was sold on Intel, and I had someone tell me, well, goodness, why would you go with Ryzen? You're going to get more cores, more threads, slightly lower clocks and such, but overall, it's going to be much better for you. Now, like I said, I am, running workstation applications and such, so I need more cores than I do speed. If you're doing regular gaming, if you were doing regular gaming a year ago, you really needed 8 cores at most, just gaming, and then you would have to rely on clock speeds. Clock speeds got you over, and that's where Intel won. Well, now things are changing. More cores are needed. 8 cores becoming the standard, not the kind of the top end. For the longest time, we sat on 8-core processors, and AMD said, nope, we're going to 12 and 16 core. Then Intel's like, 14 nanometer, can we get a 10 core out of you? And 14 nanometer's like, 10 core, and then boom, 10 core processor, 5.3 gigahertz, and I mean, it could melt both the North and South poles with just running for 5 minutes. I mean, the thing's insane. I have nothing good to say about it at all, other than it has 10 cores compared to 8 cores from the last generation. I'm really not that impressed with it. But AMD, I mean, has already upped core count. They already beat Intel there. You got more price performance in that sense, too, because their pricing was significantly, I'm not going to say lower, I'm not going to say cheaper, I'm going to say better than Intel's. It justified, buying it. It made sense to buy the chips for what they were. Intel's the one here that's price gouging, not AMD. And you got to think, AMD literally has chips with 6 more cores and 16 and 12 more threads than Intel's chips. Not as high clocks, but more cores, more threads, and more capabilities and everything but gaming, because it relies on the clock speed mainly. That's changing. Zen 3 is a clock speed powerhouse. This is what I said about Navi. They're going to scale. RDNA 2 is going to be the core count increase. They're going to keep the core count the next generation. Same compute units. But they are going to improve the clock speeds, improve the architecture, improve the efficiency, decrease latency. That's what they did here with Zen 3. Zen 2, they increased the core count. Zen 3 is refining that core count. Okay? Then we have Zen 4, that's on 5 nanometer. With a denser node, we can expect an increase in core count. I bet the next series after that, Zen 5, is going to be still on 5 nanometer, probably EUV. Okay, 5 nanometer EUV. And they're just going to refine the architecture. I think they're going to continue this process. It's a very smart process, and Intel can't keep up. Intel's now trying to cover not one base like AMD is, where they're like, we'll increase core counts. And they do increase clock speed some, but not significantly. But we're going to increase core counts and improve on the rest of things kind of mildly. And the next generation, we're going to really dial in on the feature set, software, core, or clock speeds, and latency of the product, and the thermals, and they're going to kind of go back and forth on that. And I think that's a very good strategy. Intel's now trying to accomplish too much at once, and they're getting overwhelmed. And now they're struggling with even pricing and such. So you have pricing, thermals, clock speeds, core count, feature set. That's 5 things I just listed off right there. I can guarantee there's a dozen more. I'm not a semiconductor engineer, so I wouldn't be able to tell you everything, but that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of big things for Intel to do. The only thing Intel can really do is market. And I wouldn't even call it marketing. I'd call it deception, because you're really cheating someone into buying a product that makes no sense to buy. They're ripping people off, frankly. But I think this is the final nail in the coffin for Intel. And if Intel cannot come out with something after this launch, if they cannot react to this launch with a product that has better price performance, more cores, and higher clocks while maintaining a reasonable power draw and good thermals, I don't think Intel's ever going to recover. And we've seen the slow decline of Intel, which is starting to snowball. And I think now the snowball is hitting the ramp. It's going to fly off the ramp. And when it lands, which could be another 5-10 years, it's not going to be a snowball anymore. It's just going to be a big cloud of snow, and Intel will be no more. And I'm not saying this to hate on Intel and such. I'm saying this because Intel's practicing poor business. It's not valuing its customers as it should. And it's not looking good for Intel. It's not looking good for Intel. So I think AMD's got this in the bag. One other thing I want to talk about here briefly. There's been rumors of a price increase, and I would like to address that. So what we're looking at exactly. And like I said, AMD's got this in the bag. I don't think there's any product on the entire product stack, Enthusiast, Threadripper, 4-core APUs, that Intel can beat AMD on. I think AMD has got this in the bag entirely, and that begs the question of whether AMD will raise pricing. Here's my thoughts. There's 2 situations. No, they won't. Pricing stays the same. Now, mind you, AMD will launch a product, and then throughout its lifetime, they'll drop that product. Sometimes $100, $150 from the original price. So keep in mind that if you're not hard-pressed to get a brand new, especially if you have a previous, I'd say, Zen 1, Zen 2 CPU, you're good. If you have an Intel 9th gen, 10th gen, 8th gen CPU, you're good. You can wait a little bit. If you're trying to build a new system and you're hard-pressed, I get it. If you need the fastest and the best right now, I get it. But if not, and you can wait a little bit, I highly suggest waiting about 6 months after launch because you're already going to start to see some dropping in pricing. And after that, the pricing really will just continue to drop and become more reasonable. So that's the first thing is, if they don't, let's continue that. But even if they raise pricing, one, it's justifiable. I mean, yes, it sucks that they might raise the cost of a 12-core processor from last generation. But like I said, they have the tendency to drop pricing throughout the year. I don't think that's going to change. And they may do it to where they launch at the same price, but they don't decrease pricing as much. They don't drop pricing as much as they normally do. What I'm saying by drop pricing is like you look at all the major retailers and the pricing is, it's marked down from the original price. I don't see many 3900Xs selling at $500. I see them selling at Micro Center for $400. So, I mean, it's food for thought, but I think even if, no matter what AMD does with pricing, it's justifiable. It might suck a little bit, but at the same time, AMD is delivering immensely, and there's really no one else in the business that is delivering to the consumer like AMD is. So, in a sense, you want to, in a way, help them out too, in the sense of, higher price, because that's more money they'll put towards a better product and such, and building up the company to improve things. AMD, while they are a corporate company, I would say they do care about the consumer significantly more than most companies do. And that is why I really like AMD. That's why I use AMD. That's why I'm going to continue to use AMD. If AMD stops doing that and another company surpasses their ability to benefit the consumer and work for the consumer, I will go to that company immediately. But I have to see it in order to do it. So, all in all, that's my thoughts on Zen 3. Like I said, back to some housekeeping here to wrap up the video. My thoughts, simply this. We're going to have a Zen 3 live stream. Once I find the time of AMD's event, I'm going to schedule that. Make sure you hit the bell on that. Make sure you hit the bell on my channel to be notified too if you don't want to wait around for that announcement. And I will be happy to see you there. This video is dedicated entirely to Zen 3. I have information on NVIDIA's A6000 graphics card, the 3070 delay, crash updates, NVIDIA stock concerns where we might not see reasonable stock till 2021, and of course RDNA 2, which I'm going to do another exclusive RDNA 2 video after the Zen 3 launch, but I want to clear through this first because this is happening in 3 days, and I want to let a little bit more rumors trickle out from RDNA 2. There was a lot of stuff that's dropped, including the Navi 21 die, confirmation of the Infinity cache over on Red Gaming Tech. Cortex had the die, by the way. Not an Apple fan has been releasing tons of stuff. Shout out to Paul. He always does a great job. Both Pauls. Paul, not an Apple fan, and Paul, Red Gaming Tech, of course. That guy's a legend, man. Like everyone says, the guy could work for AMD. He's amazing. He's probably, by far, my favorite channel when it comes to AMD news. Not an Apple fan. My favorite channel for keeping it real. Moore's Law is dead. I think he's always able to connect more of the numbers as far as pricing and data. And a lot more of the corporate activities going on, such as NVIDIA's Ultimate Play. Go check his channel out. I'm linking all these guys on my channel below, which there's another thing. On my featured channels, when I feature a channel, it means I trust them as a source. I don't always, but overall, mostly agree with the content they're putting out. I know they take their position seriously. I know they're not here to brainwash people with corporate BS, because quite frankly, I don't think that's very fair. Some of the bigger channels are doing that now. I'm not a fan of that. And overall, they're pretty good people. And they do a lot for the tech community, and I'm beyond grateful to have been watching their content for so long, and I'm beyond grateful that they're here to this day making videos and are going to continue to make videos and help supply information and reliable, not overhyped information to the tech community. So overall, like I said, once again, thank you guys, Tom, Paul, and Cortex. It is amazing what you do. I'm gonna be vetting a couple other channels. I've heard a lot about Jim at Adored TV and Igor's Lab. So I'm gonna be checking out those guys, but I've never really watched them too much. So give me about a month to kind of start to get in the groove of that, and then once I do, I'll hopefully be able to add them to that list and start getting them some shout outs too, because like I said, I'm beyond excited to help support other channels in the tech industry, because it's a community. It's not a competition, and that's one of the biggest things. You need to have these people. I love it when I hear Tom and Paul bounce off ideas off each other, and then Paul and Paul bounce ideas off each other, and then Paul from Not an Apple Fan and Cortex, and they're all bouncing ideas off each other, and they're bouncing, leaks. And I know Not an Apple Fan doesn't do that too much. He tries to stay out of the rumor mill and the leaks and such, but he will occasionally bounce information back and forth from what he said and such. And, they'll talk about things, and, they'll try to create, the realistic picture of things. Not Big Navi is 200 times the power of the 3090. I mean, I'm not kidding. There's probably some fanboy somewhere, in the world saying that. But at the same time, like I said, once again, amazing job, guys. You guys are really, I think, the backbone of, the information chain, and you guys are keeping it real. Great work. If you see this, thanks for watching. Man, you guys are amazing. And yeah, thanks for tuning into Graphic Zone live stream October the 8th. That's this Thursday. That's in 3 days. Mark your calendars, guys. I'm telling you, once I get that time, I am going to create that live stream. But if you have not already, smack that like button, hit subscribe, and ring that bell. I will see you all in 3 days. Have a great week.